Hey besties and bosses, we're gonna try this again. I just came on from Zoom. Apparently that wasn't working. I was trying to go on Instagram, be on here and do all the fun tech things and it just wasn't working. So I am late y'all, but I was on time and we're gonna hang now. So happy Tuesday. It is a really important and big day here in the US. If you are in the US, I'm sure you're very aware, it is election day. It is arguably the most important election of our time. I think there's a lot of emotions. There's just a lot going on for all of us in the US. If you're not in the US, I'm sure you're quite aware of this as well, and this is impacting you in some way. So I know we're in the middle of election. I'm sure many of you are gonna watch this on the replay, but I also wanted to still have our regularly scheduled live and to be here to interrupt some of the election anxiety, to have a conversation, to still show up for all of you on this very important day. Do want to check in. Hey, nice to have you on. Say hi if you're here, if you're watching on the replay. Let me know how you're feeling. I want to make sure I'm here to support you as well. Let me know if there's anything coming up you want to talk through. What I thought would be important to talk about today, since it is the election and this is a conversation I think is important anyway, is really talking about the importance of leadership as it applies to business. I think elections obviously have to do with leadership, and I think if anything, what we have seen this year between COVID and how that has affected our world and all of us, and what we are seeing in the US with, yes, the election, but just so much of what's going on, is what a role leadership plays in our lives, how important it really is. And what I think in the online space, what we hear so much of are things like, I talk all the time about mindset. I think that's still the most important thing. We hear a lot about marketing and launching and making money in 5-figure months and sales strategies and all of these different strategies. And what I don't think we quite honestly talk about very much is the importance of leadership and the role of leadership in your business. And I have found personally in my business experience and as I work with clients, I really see leadership as one of the core pillars of what creates business success. And I think it is paramount to your success. And I think that's what we're seeing so much of in our world. So please feel free to tell me how you're feeling about the election. This is an open space for conversation, but I thought what we could do in honor of the election today is talk specifically about that leadership as it applies to your business. And I wanted to chat a little bit about how I personally view leadership in business, that role I see it play in your business. And then I thought it would be helpful to talk about it from just a perspective and a lens of some of the mindsets that I view as important if you want to show up as a leader and a thought leader in your business. So let me grab a sip of water. What I would love to hear from all of you as I readjust, and thank you all whoever was on live with me earlier before we had my tech fail. Thanks for hopping back on. But I'd love to hear from you. What do you think of when you hear the word leadership? What does that mean to you? Whether you're watching now or in the replay, I think it's always interesting with words and phrases like this just to hear the different opinions we have. I know I was chatting with a client about this, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago. We were talking about the importance of leadership, and the word itself was very daunting and felt very heavy, and we had to really unpack it and look at it from a couple different angles before it felt like a word that my client was able to really embrace and take on as an entrepreneur. So curious if that feels true for any of you, and what any of you feel or think about the word leadership. And I promise I'm going to go into how I view leadership, because I really see it as two parts, and we'll break down some examples and some of the mindset that I think is so important. But what I'm really seeing in our online space, and what I really believe, given what our world is experiencing, is that consumers, that buyers, that people who are buying products and services right now, they're no longer looking for simply a product that's great or simply a service that's great. We're at choice as consumers in the online space. There is so much we can choose for. And I'm really seeing, and I think this has been a trend for a while, but I'm seeing particularly right now, how much of a shift there is with those who are voting essentially with their dollars to invest their dollars in products and services that have leadership behind them, that have thought leadership behind them, that have a mission or a cause. For any of you who know Simon Sinek's work, he talks so much about the power of why. So this isn't a new concept, but I think we are seeing it even more given our current climate. And we're seeing that I mean, I know this is true for me. I'd rather spend a couple extra dollars, or I'd rather buy from a company that I know is aligned with my views, that I know is making a voice, that I know that cares about impact, that I know is taking a stance from a leadership perspective, from a thought leadership role, than I would, save a few bucks from a business or company that I don't see that in. And I think particularly when we're getting into the service-based industry, which I know many of you are service-based in some way, when we're looking at smaller businesses, I believe that to be particularly true. And what I've seen this year with clients is that's really making a difference in, yes, the impact, but also in the money they're making. So I really do think this is an important driver for business. I also think leadership is, quite honestly, the role that business asks you to step into if you want a sustainable, thriving business. So I'll tell you how I define leadership, and then feel free to chime in. And I'm very parched today, y'all. So I need a little water. So let me just pull up my notes here, because this is one I wanted to have a few notes on. So in terms of leadership and the way I see it, I really see leadership as two parts when we're talking about it in terms of business. I see it on the front side of this as really the ability and the willingness to mobilize and organize a group of people and a plan towards a common goal or towards a common mission, and really being able to mobilize, organize around this plan to help people reach, again, that central goal. So in business, we see this as, if you're a business owner, you have a central goal, you have a mission, you have something you are working towards. And part of your role as an entrepreneur, I believe, and as a leader in that leadership role, is being able to mobilize people, whether it's in a community like this or you have a team, if you're mobilizing a team around you, but being able to organize people around that goal, around that common goal, and have that plan of action that you're able to move, that group of people towards. I think that's the general way we see leadership overall. If we think about the more common definition of leadership. In business, I also see leadership on the other side is really the thought leadership front, which I think is really important right now in our world and as entrepreneurs. And I really see this as a key part of marketing right now, quite honestly. And I think it's a differentiator in marketing. And I really see that, if we're looking at what is thought leadership, as the ability to have new thoughts and ideas, to be innovative, to be creative, to take, instead of to regurgitate what you're hearing, to be able to look at your industry and to have new thoughts and to share them, to be willing to take up the space and voice those ideas before someone gives you essentially approval to do so. And I really see that as thought leadership and an important part of overall leadership, whether that's sharing ideas or whether that's managing a team. I think one of the biggest, I don't know if you'd call this a mindset or a trait, but I think something that's really important as an entrepreneur is having that self-trust in your vision and that ability to show up, to speak up, to take up space, again, before someone gives you permission, before someone gives you approval. If you're running a team and managing a team, you can't ask everyone else for permission, right? You have to be that one who's able to show up with the vision, create that plan, mobilize everyone around it before you get buy-in from everyone else. And the same, if we're talking about something like showing up and sharing content, you have to, I believe, as a thought leader, be willing to create new ideas, look at things differently, and share them before you get that stamp of approval that is the kind of side fringe benefit if you're more regurgitating content you've heard somewhere else. Let me know if that is making sense in terms of what we're talking about here, because I want us to be on the same page. And I think these are both two parts to the same whole, to the same definition of leadership. I really see this as such a crucial and just a key pillar to business and business success. Y'all are so quiet. So hopefully this is landing. So let's talk a little bit about how do you step into that leadership role? If we're going to take this buy-in that this is really important for running a business, that leadership and that thought leadership is important to your marketing. It is important for, yes, having that positive impact and, quite honestly, making money in your business and being able to do the work you love. Let's unpack a little bit. And I'm going to want to talk a little bit about some of the traits I see that go into being able to step into that role as a leader and a thought leader, and some of the mindsets that I think are really crucial, because it's one thing to say, like, be a thought leader, take up space, step into leadership. this all sounds fucking great, but what the heck does that mean? And I think, like anything, sometimes it is easy in practice, but a lot of the mindset and the work that goes behind it isn't always so easy. So I want to unpack a little bit of that, and y'all let me know if you have questions, reflections while we're talking through this. So I think overall, just what we were talking about before, just some like key elements here with leadership. I talk so much about taking up space like a boss, and just overall that concept of taking up space. And I see that as such an embodiment of leadership and thought leadership. It is one thing to have ideas and thoughts on your, in your private time, in your journal, which is a beautiful thing. It is a whole nother thing to take those thoughts and to share them and to take up space with them and to own them unapologetically in the online space or in the offline space before someone's giving you that stamp of approval. And I think that is such an embodiment of taking up space and what I mean when I say take up space, and such a crucial part of really what embodying leadership and thought leadership is. I also really see thought leadership in particular as being very much tied into self-trust and having that trust in your business vision and the work you do, and that ability to hold fast to that, because so much of what leadership is asking and requiring of you is to trust yourself, because you can't outsource that if you're going to show up and share ideas or lead a group of people around an idea and go out and test something that hasn't been done before. You have to have that pillar of self-trust in order, so that you can show up as a leader and bring those ideas that haven't been, brought forth before, bring a team forth with you. So I really see taking up space and that self-trust in yourself and in your business and business vision as such a crucial part of leadership, and that thought leadership piece that we're talking about particularly in this moment. I'm just making sure I don't see any comments. Just want to make sure, because sometimes y'all have questions. So let's see, because I have a lot of things here. Okay, let's start here. For this group in particular, because if you're here, I'm like, where do I want to start with this? I know you're heart-centered, and I know if you're here, you're passion-driven and you care about people. And so I think this is an important piece to talk about with leadership, because I think sometimes the connotation when we think and hear the word leadership, I know I used to have a very masculine, I used to think of it as very masculine, very much almost like powerful in terms of I'm trying to squash people as a leader. That's how I envisioned leadership. And really now, as I'm in business and as a thought leader myself, the way I see leadership and what I see is really crucial for those of us who are heart-centered and passion-driven, who are also leaders in our business and in our space, is seeing that leadership is very much tied to your integrity. And it is to lead by example, and seeing that it is a responsibility, that leadership, thought leadership, is a responsibility and it's not to be taken lightly. There is a reverence, I believe, with what that responsibility is. I was talking with my boyfriend about, we were talking about the election, we were talking about this topic and about thought leadership, and he shared this story, and I think this really describes the responsibility and reverence for leadership. And I think this is very applicable to what's going on right now with the election, and as we see how leadership can be demonstrated from a place of integrity and from a really place of that reverence, responsibility. And I think that's what all of us are hoping to vote for, versus when leadership is abused and used as a force of power, and really that responsibility is just eschewed and thrown away. And I think that's so much of what many of us are in the middle of experiencing and hoping, I believe, to change with our votes. So the example my boyfriend gave me, and I think this will land with all of you, and he said when he was around maybe 6 or 7, he used to walk to school, and when he would walk home from school, he remembers one day, the crosswalk, if any of you had this, you have someone who walks people across the, I don't know what they call them, the school guards, walks you across the street. And he remembers one day walking home, and he was just so excited to go home, and he ran out, traffic wasn't coming, he just ran out ahead and went home. And the next day when he went to school, he was called to the principal's office, and because he had run out ahead, and the principal said, look, you're not in trouble, you didn't do anything wrong, but you're someone people look up to. You're someone people follow. And it's important for you to realize, as someone who is essentially a leader, what is what the principal is saying, and people following you, there's a responsibility that comes with that. So when you run out into the street ahead of, the traffic, it's not just yourself you have to think about. You really have to remember that when you're leading, that other people are following, other people are looking to you, and it is your responsibility to think about that before you go run out into the street, because it's not just you then, it's whoever else follows you that maybe isn't as quick and fast as you. Hey Amanda, nice to see you. Let me know if this is making sense. It's always nice, always nice to know if this is landing. And he was sharing this story with me, and I think it's such a great example of what leadership is and the responsibility and the reverence for leadership and thought leadership, and why as entrepreneurs it's such an important topic to think about. Because yes, we want to be thought leaders. Yes, I want to invite you to be a leader and to think about, how do I embody this as a business owner? How do I step into my leadership role as a business owner? How do I lead a team? How do I lead a community? How do I share new thoughts? But I also want to invite you to treat this with respect and the reverence it deserves, and to see that as a leader, part of what you're doing by leading is mobilizing a group around you. And that is something, it's like anything, right? I talk about this with marketing all the time. Like when you learn about marketing, you can use this for good or you can use this for bad. When we're talking about marketing or sales strategy, the same with leadership and thought leadership. You can use this for good or you can use this for bad. And I think when we're saying using it for bad, it's not even coming from it as a place of like, I'm power hungry and I'm trying to be someone who's like coming from this place of like, I'm going to be a leader and do horrible things in the world. I think sometimes coming from bad or using this for bad is really the ignorance and not looking at leadership with that role of responsibility, not taking responsibility, and realizing that when you're showing up, when you're sharing, when you're leading, if other people are looking to you as a leader, as a thought leader, there is a responsibility. You have to think, if I run out into the street in front of the traffic, who else is following me? There is a responsibility with that. And so I think that's just an important thing to think about. And that doesn't mean if you're running out into the street, you're doing that intentionally, because you want someone to run behind you and get hit, which is a horrible example there. But it doesn't mean it comes from a bad intention. But what I think happens sometimes in our space is, because you're heart-centered, because sometimes, some of the good enough stuff can come up, I think people don't realize the power their leadership has, and therefore they don't give their leadership the reverence it deserves and realize the responsibility there is with that role. Does that make sense, y'all? So I think that's first and foremost just something to think about, and I think particularly today it's important for all of us to think about. I also just realized, y'all, I'm in New York City. It's about 6:30. This feels very important. If you are on the East Coast and you're watching me, the polls are still open. Please do not watch me and go vote first, or watch me while you're in line for the polling booths. If you're watching now on the replay, I know in New York City, the polling booths are open until 9 p.m. So I'm having this conversation with everyone. I am assuming you voted, in which case, thank you for voting. And if you haven't voted yet, there is still time. Please go and vote. I was so distracted by tech. I didn't open with that, and I should have. So that feels very important to say. Okay, let's go back to some of the mindsets behind leadership. So kind of piggybacking on what we were just talking about with the responsibility here, I really believe that thought leadership sacrifices self-interest for the interest of the greater good, or for the interest of the mission, or for your work. And I'm going to talk about this from a mind, because some of the mindsets I think go behind this and how I think about it. But I think this is, again, something we're seeing as we look to who we want to vote for in leaders in the US, even if you're outside of the US, seeing leadership as not being about self-interest, but being about the interest, again, of mobilizing a group around a central goal, but then really doing that with the vision of the greater good, with the vision of, if I'm leading, who am I mobilizing around me? Can I have their interests at heart? And can I sacrifice my self-interest for, whether it's my work, my mission, but really this bigger picture vision? And I think that is so much of what leadership is. It is, again, discarding self-interest, interest for the greater good. And I want to come back to some questions I think that are important to ask. I'm gonna piggyback to that. Because I think part of then that also, and this comes from a mindset perspective, I think leadership and thought leadership in terms of mindset really asks you as a business owner to step into a place, again, we were talking about self-trust and that your own self-trust around yourself, your work, but also around your mission and work. If you're going to put the bigger interests, if you're going to, eschew your self-interest for the bigger interest and for that greater good, I think part of what leadership really asks and requires is you to come from a place where you are okay with knowing you're going to get it wrong, you're gonna fuck it up, you're gonna do something wrong, and people might be mad at you, and allowing that to be okay. And here's why. As a leader, as a thought leader, by definition, it is a requirement that you go first. So the school example, why the principal called my boyfriend in is as a leader, he was going first. He was running onto the street, and that means you're testing something and you have to be okay with those consequences, and people might follow you. As a thought leader in business, by leading, you are going first. That means you're going into the dark. That means you are often going to test an idea, put something out there that hasn't been done before, that hasn't been shared before, that hasn't been tested before, right? That is part of the definition of being a business owner. That is definitely the definition of leading. If you are in the Tour de France and you are leading that race, you are in front. You are the one who's going to have the heavy, what's that called? I can't even think. Not the slipstream. Slipstream's when you're behind them. The wind, you don't get the brake that everyone else behind you does because you're braking the wind for them. What the heck is that term? Do y'all know what I'm talking about? When you are leading, when you are a thought leader, that is part of the role as a leader. You get the wind on you. Everyone who comes after you gets the benefit of not having to go first, which means you have to be okay with you're gonna get it wrong. You're gonna fuck it up sometimes. You have to be able and willing to test and tweak, which is also just part of business, and knowing people might not agree with you. And that is by definition what it is to be first and to lead. You have to be willing to go first, and you have to be willing to fall on your face. And I don't even see this from the lens. I do think there's an element of you have to be willing to fail, which I talk about a lot in business, and I really don't believe in failure. But I don't even know if this is so much failure as just getting it wrong and knowing that part of leading is being first, and part of being first means you're discovering as you go. When COVID first hit, something I noticed in our online space is it was really asking for business owners to step into their role as thought leaders and to show up in new ways. And those business owners I have really seen thrive in our online space. But part of that meant a lot of business owners, this was new uncharted territory. If you were being a thought leader and showing up during that time and just the various things we've gone through this year, that also meant you had no idea. This was new uncharted territory. What was ahead? You had to be willing to show up and go move through the fear and speak out and speak up and share your thoughts and ideas around something we haven't experienced before. Might get it wrong. And I'm sure many of us did get it wrong. We did the best we knew how at the time, and then we got new information, then we figured it out. And that is leadership, that is thought leadership. And I think that's such an important mindset to embrace, because what prevents leadership is it's almost, and without getting political, I think this is also where we're seeing problems in leadership, is this idea that I always get it right. I always know everything. I have to know everything before I share and show up as a leader, which causes, I think, people who I wish would be taking up more space with their leadership and thought leadership from showing up and sharing. And I think this is where it's we've got the light and the dark with leadership, right? We talked about using it for good or bad. I think this is also where we see the dark side to leadership. The person who is not willing to see that as a leader, you go first and you might get things wrong, and leading from a place of ego and not willing to admit when they've made a mistake. And part of leadership is, again, I believe, knowing there's no way if you're going first that you're not going to get it wrong from time to time, and just being willing to admit when you've got it wrong. That to me is strong thought leadership and strong leadership. That is also what mobilizes a group around you, whether we're talking in business or outside of business. I have a team, and I'm sure my team will attest to this. I let them know, like, here are my flaws, here are the things I get wrong sometimes. That's how I can also competently lead, because I know I'm going to get things wrong, but I also believe that's how I'm able to have a team support me more. I know if that's making sense. I will try not to hit you over the head with that. Let me see here if there's anything else I wanted to see. Okay, the other part with that and going first that feels important from the mindset and how I view leadership, and really this is, leadership as a whole, but really how I view it in business and what I think is so crucial in business. And I promise y'all, this is so important in the scope of today, but really in the scope of your business and in the scope of the impact you make. And something I have seen to be true in business is the more you focus on impact, the more money you will make as a byproduct. I know if you're here, you're heart-centered, you want to help people, but I promise the more you focus on impact, the more you focus on value, the more you focus on serving people and leading, the more money flows into your business. It is the natural byproduct. They go together, they go hand in hand. So the other piece here, it kind of piggybacks off what we were talking about, just in terms of being willing to go first and being willing to get it wrong, but it's also being willing to speak up and being willing to make the hard decisions, again, for that greater good or for the mission or for the work. And I think this is such a crucial part of leadership, of thought leadership. And even if that means people won't agree or they won't get it or they won't understand, again, it's being willing to speak up and being willing to make those hard decisions. That is being a leader. And being willing to do that even when everyone around you isn't giving approval or even when everyone else isn't saying yes. Being that voice and willing to speak up when it's uncomfortable, when you're not getting permission from everyone, when everyone else around you isn't applauding, that is thought leadership. And if we think about, for those of us in the US and voting, isn't that what we're looking for? We're looking for, right, someone who will be willing to speak up for others, for what they believe in, for the greater good, even when it's not comfortable, even when they're not getting applause. We're looking for someone to make a hard decision, even when that's not the popular choice, even when someone doesn't necessarily understand because they don't have all the pieces of information. And this is so applicable in business. So often business asks you in marketing to speak up, right? To share your voice, to share something before everyone else does. That's thought leadership in marketing. That will blow your business up. That's taking up space. But also if you think about, leading a team, so often you have to be, as the business owner, you have to be willing to make the tough decisions and to make the clear decisions and not just to look to everyone else around you to make them for you or to yes you. That is leading a team. That's not always the fun part. I mean, for some people it is, but that is what leadership asks of you. And I think it's being, again, going back to that self-trust part, I think that requires such a core piece of self-trust, and it sounds cheesy, but really self-love, where it's like, you're inherently okay, even if those around you don't understand in the moment, so that you don't need to be yes all the time to be able to make those decisions that you believe are, serve the mission, serve your business, serve the greater good, serve the bigger goals. Because again, as a leader, we're going to use the Tour de France. If you're leading the race, you have a different vantage point. You can see the goal. You can see the business vision. You can see, if you are the CEO of your business, you see all of the pieces in a very different way than all of the bike, for a Tour de France example, bike number 25 doesn't see the road ahead the same way you do if you're leading the pack of bikes. If you see the full road ahead, you're able to see. You have such a different vantage point. Same thing as a CEO if you're running your business and if you're coming from the place of leadership. You have such a different vantage point and such a different ability to see the vision than someone who only sees a small portion or can't see the road ahead the way you can. And it's really crucial. I mean, this is what directs and steers the entire ship of your business, and why it's essential as a CEO for you to make those decisions from the vantage point you have Instead of making decisions that's going to make someone who's, bike 100 or who only sees a small portion of the business vision that's going to make them comfortable or that's going to make them feel good. I do believe if we're talking about team leadership, it's very beneficial to work with your team to help them understand your thinking and help them understand your vision and mission and why this is important. But ultimately, as the CEO and as a leader in your business, it's your job, because you have a different vantage point, to be able to lead, even if someone doesn't understand or agree, however many bikes back, and still being willing to listen, I believe, to those thoughts and input. Let me know if that's making sense. We talked about the importance of getting it wrong. 2 more thoughts here. You guys open to 2 more thoughts on the leadership piece, because I realize we've been talking for a while, but I have two more pieces here I want to share with you on this topic. I want to close with some questions, but before we talk about that, let me just see here. The other piece that feels very important, and this feels important, I think this is very applicable to our election and for today overall, but when I think about thought leadership and when I think about how important this is in business, again, with taking up space and with being willing to share those ideas, what I find gets confusing for so many people, what I hear so much in our online space, what I do hear conversation about is disrupting and about differentiation. And I have a little bit of beef with disruption, because I understand the concept. I think it's quite important, and I understand why disruption is beneficial in the blue ocean and in marketing. But what I find happens, and what I think sometimes gets confused when we think about thought leadership, is being different for the sake of being different, disrupting for the sake of disrupting. And I think what we're seeing is when you disrupt for the sake of disrupting, because what it does is it does get attention. That is, I guess, leadership. It will mobilize people, but it creates drama. It creates havoc. And being different for the sake of being different, or disrupting for the sake of disrupting, is leading from your ego and leading from really that place that I believe is not based in self-trust, that doesn't have the greater goods interest, which we were talking about earlier, that isn't looking to the mission, the work, and really what the intention of leadership is, and really is not taking that responsibility piece and the reverence for leadership, which is, if I'm leading, I have a responsibility. If I'm a thought leader, I have a responsibility. I have to be aware that if I run out to the street, people might follow me, right? And so I think if we're disrupting for the sake of disrupting, that's ego driven. That is because I want to be different. I want attention. I heard this is good for marketing. I want to see if I can disrupt so that I can get attention. This is when we have drama get kicked up. And this is when I believe we lose the reverence towards leadership and thought leadership. And it really does more harm than good overall, for the greater good, but really for your business as well. And so what I think is so important is taking that time instead to think and to ideate and to get clear on what are your values, what are your goals, what do you actually believe to be true. And I'm going to share some questions, instead of how can I simply disrupt, or how can I simply be different for the sake of being different, and seeing how one comes from a place of self-trust, one comes from a place of true leadership, which is again about mobilizing people around that greater good and takes that reverence and that responsibility. And the other is really coming from a place of ego. It's coming from a place of fear. It's coming from a place, quite honestly, of lack of self-trust. Let me know if that difference makes sense to you, because I think the intention behind the leadership is going to change so much of then how your leadership plays out in your business, the impact it makes, and the end results you get in your business. So let's close with some of those questions, shall we? I pulled up a few because I don't want to forget them, but these are some questions to think about. If you want to think about, how do I show up and lead more? How do I set this intention in my business? And I think overall, taking the time to set the intention and see, I want to set the intention to be more of a leader. I want to be a thought leader. I really want to step into, how do I take up more space as a leader? I think first and foremost, setting that intention. And then I think secondarily, and this piggybacks a little bit on what we were talking about, I think last week, when on our live last week, but getting clear on what is your your vision as a business owner? What is that bigger goal? What is your mission as a business owner? And what are your values as a business owner? This is something I often ask my clients. I give them when we start working together, they get a packet with different tools. And one of the questions I always have them dive into are, what are their values for their business? So I think for all of us, we all have personal values, and I think these are really important because as someone making decisions, anytime you make a decision is a values clarification. And the more clear you are on your personal values, the easier it is to make clear, informed decisions that serve you. In business, it is the same thing. All decisions are a values clarification. Making decisions as a business owner, as a leader, is really important. Being able to make decisions confidently and being able to make them relatively quickly and not changing your decision too often is important as a business owner. And this is so inherently tied to success. And the more clear you are in your values as a business owner and the values of your business, the easier it is to make those decisions in your business and to lead as a business owner, to step into that thought leadership, again, because all decisions are values clarifications. Quite simply, what that means is if you're clear on your values, and what I mean by values are things like community or impact or service or money or wealth or financial freedom. These are values. If you're clear on those, any decision you make, you can filter it through your values and see how your value impacts that decision. And if you're clear on your top core values, this allows you to make clear decisions. Similarly, if you're clear on your top core values as a business owner, it really, I believe, helps you to show up as the type of leader you want to be and to get clear on, if I'm going to go first, if I'm going to lead. That wasn't good. That was the cord from my computer. I know what values I am leading from, what values I'm making decisions as a leader from, and this is also going to impact that business vision and those bigger business goals you have. Let me know if that makes sense around the values piece. I do have some questions on that somewhere, so let me know, any of you watching now or in the replay as well, if you're curious more about the values for your business, because we can do a live on that. I can even see if I have a resource I can share with all of you, because I think that's just such a core piece to business and to leadership, I believe. So first and foremost, this is what I would invite you as someone, if you're going to think about thought leadership, if you're going to think about leadership in your business, getting clear on your business goals, getting clear on your business, that bigger business vision, getting clear on those business values, the values you have as a business owner and for your business. I also think overall, just starting to look at your industry as a whole, as your business as a whole, as your strategies, looking at different scopes of your business and starting to ask questions like, is this idea or thought true? Is what we believe historically true? So this is, I don't know if this is the greatest example, but it's what's popping up for me. I have a business model that I know a very few percentage of, I do only one-on-one in my business, and I do that very intentionally. And I know very few coaches at my level in business who focus on one-on-one only. And that is because as a thought leader, as a leader in my business and in this industry, I have really taken time to get clear on what are my values and to make decisions around my business model around that, and to really be clear around what is the narrative in this industry. Part of the narrative in this industry is like, you have to scale. The way you're supposed to do it is you have a certain number of clients, and then you have a group program, and then you water down your work and whatever, fill in the blank. And I believe very, very firmly in my business model and the impact it delivers and the power of one-on-one coaching and why I started this business in the first place. Why I'm sharing this is one of the questions I had to sit down and ask myself is this true? Is this true in terms of what I've been taught in the industry? When I went to coach training, I was literally taught a model of like how you grow a coaching business. And I had to sit and question, like, is this true? Do I believe this? Is this aligned with my values as a business owner? What do I think here? And I had to take the time to stop and think and ask those questions and ask the hard questions for myself and be willing to get clear on those answers instead of looking to the answers that someone else is giving me. And I think that is one of the core tenets as a leader and as a thought leader is, can you give yourself the space and time, I know I've talked about this in other lives before, to think and to ask yourself better questions so that you can give yourself better answers instead of looking at, because if you're a thought leader and a leader, you're going to have to come up with that answer first. You have to go first instead of looking to who can I look to give me the answer. As soon as you're looking to who can I look to give me the answer, you are no longer in leadership. You are in following. And again, there are absolutely times to be mentored, to collaborate. There are times to learn, there are times to consume, there are times to absorb and to follow. So I am not saying that doesn't serve you as well in business, but for the context of this conversation on thought leadership, it really is asking you to ask those questions of yourself and to come up with the answers for yourself instead of looking to the answers from someone else. That is by definition what it means to be a thought leader, and to think and share first. Let me know if that makes sense. Here's some other questions for you. So this is, I was phrasing it here, but what do I think is wrong here? What don't I agree with here? And this here can apply to a lot of things. Your industry, the thought that is being shared by a whole as the industry. If this is outside of your industry, this is when we want to speak up, right? Do you see something that you don't agree with, that you think is wrong? What do you believe is wrong? What don't you agree with here? With material, I mean, this is how innovation happens in our space. This is how new inventions happen. Someone has to look and take the time to think as a leader, as a thought leader, and say, what don't I agree with here? What is wrong here? What doesn't work about this? What could I do differently? What would I do differently? What do I believe should be different here? And this is differentiating or disrupting, but it's not disrupting for the sake of disrupting, which kicks up drama and again comes from that place of ego and fear. This is taking the time to think as a thought leader to see, how can I improve? How can I lead? How can I go first with a new idea and test it? So what could be done better here? How can I improve upon this? What needs to go? What needs to be omitted here? I think blue ocean strategy, I'm not pulling this from these, but I think these are probably similar to some of blue ocean strategy's questions. And it talks a lot about looking at the different quadrants and asking these questions. And I think it's a great book, by the way, if you haven't read Blue Ocean Strategy. But I think the questions it offers up are a lot of what we're talking about today, and what drives thought leadership, what drives, yes, creating a blue ocean, which is that differentiation, but what drives that different kind of thinking and being able to see things differently and have those new ideas that you can bring to the forefront as a business owner. Just seeing here, I had another question. What could be done better? What needs to go? What don't I agree with? What do I think is wrong here? What can I improve upon? What can I make better? What would I do differently? Ask yourself these questions. These are my invitation to you. And in honor of Election Day, but really in honor of encouraging everyone here to step more and more into your role as a leader and as a thought leader. Ask yourself these questions and ask yourself more questions and allow yourself to come up with the answers first and to share your answers before looking outward for answers, before looking to someone else to give you the answers. What I find as a coach working with so many business owners is most people already have the answers inside of you. You have so many brilliant answers inside of you. You are a thought leader. That is inside of you. It's just, are you willing to ask yourself those questions and to give yourself the space and time to extract them? And then are you willing to take up space with them and to share them? That's what takes it from ideation and a brilliant idea to innovation, to being a thought leader who's sharing and willing to go first and to test and tweak it. So that is my invitation to you. That is, I think, something that we can take from, whatever happens today. Hopefully this will go peacefully and positively today, but I think something all of us can take is some inspiration and a reminder and a reverence for what leadership is and the responsibility we have as thought leaders, and take that all in and just look at how can we improve the way we're showing up as leaders, and take that into our businesses, take that to our teams, take that to our clients, take that to our industry, take that to our communities. And if all of us are willing to do that, you are then leading with responsibility, with reverence, with that coming from that place of self-trust and that place of it's for the greater good. That is going to serve the world as a whole, I believe this is, this is why I believe in entrepreneurialism. This is how we are able to impact change, but it's also going to serve your business. I promise you, promise you, promise you. If you focus on leadership, thought leadership, if you focus on impact and positive impact and value first, and you do it from this place of, from your core values as a business owner and with that business mission in mind, it will serve not just the impact, but the income you're making. Money follows impact. Money follows value. It's an energy exchange. So it's really impossible for it not to. So I promise this is a beautiful quality and trait, and it's also an integral part of your business success and the money you're making. Okay. Thank you all for being here today. There is still time to go vote if you're on the East Coast. Go out and vote if you haven't. Please, please vote if you have voted. Thank you. If you can't vote, thank you for, supporting all of us at, if you're not in the US or if you can't vote, as we're all experiencing this election. I love you all. Let me know as you're watching on the replay if you have questions, if you have thoughts. And then 2 quick announcements. My free course, Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout, is a 6-week course that is my gift to you. You can still sign up and get access. We started on Monday. We still have 5 weeks, but you can still sign up, and the replay for week 1 will be in that welcome email. So I link at the top of the group. I'll make sure we drop a link here as well. My mouth is getting tired. Other invitation for all of you, if you are interested in leaning more into those business values, in stepping into your thought leadership and taking up more space like a boss, in being able to really build, grow, and scale a business from that place of integrity and doing it your way so that you can make more money doing what you love. This is what I support my clients with. I am excellent at what I do. I'm also one of the few coaches at my level that is focused only on one-on-one coaching. So one of the few coaches you can hire at this level with the experience I have. I would love to talk to you. I will drop a link. Please book a call. We can chat more about what that would look like. My availability is very, very limited. So this is really an invitation to those of you who are ready. You're just ready for that next step, and you're ready to invest in support. And for all of you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Thank you for being here. I will see you next week. We'll have another topic then. Bye, y'all.